Mr. President, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me on behalf of the Republic of Botswana, and indeed on my own behalf, to join previous speakers in extending our congratulations to you personally and the Republic of Maldives on your well-deserved election as President of the United Nations General Assembly at its 76th session. Your election to the helm of this august body is a clear testament that the international community holds both you and your great country, the Maldives, in high regard and esteem. This is not surprising given the immense experience and career accomplishments you bring to this position, spanning over 3.5 decades. I'm fully confident that the United Nations General Assembly will benefit tremendously from your extensive diplomatic, executive, and legislative experience. As we continue to battle against and strive to recover from the dreadful COVID-19 pandemic and many other pre-existing global challenges, such as the climate crisis, your vision statement, which is anchored on 5 rays of hope, serves as an inspiration to many, including my own country, Botswana. In this respect, it is gratifying to note that your vision speaks to the topical issues confronting humanity to date, which should remain on top of the agenda of the United Nations. These include human rights, climate change, gender equality and the empowerment of women, terrorism and violent extremism, inequalities and injustices. As Botswana, we are pleased that you have prioritized these issues and committed to deliver for people, planet and prosperity, consistent with your firm belief in multilateralism and international cooperation. Mr. President, let me in the same breath take this opportunity to pay a befitting tribute to your predecessor, His Excellency Volkan Bozkır, for his effective guidance and leadership during one of the most challenging General Assembly sessions in the 75 years of the United Nations existence. The pandemic challenged us as member states and him as president of this esteemed body to be innovative and creative to ensure business continuity in order to keep the wheels of the United Nations running. Notwithstanding the limitations imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, we welcome the fact that under the able leadership of the outgoing President of the General Assembly, we successfully convened some of the most important high-level meetings of the 75th session. These included the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, the first ever summit on biodiversity, the 25th anniversary of the 4th World Conference on Women, dialogue on support to least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states, digital cooperation, reform of the Security Council, and a revitalization of the General Assembly. Most importantly, also was the convening of the 31st special session of the General Assembly in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, which ensured that as member states, we demonstrate our collective resolve to come together in support of effective global response to the unprecedented impacts of the pandemic and reinforce the principles of solidarity and shared humanity. Mr. President, my delegation therefore fully endorses your choice of the theme for the 76th session, namely building resilience through hope to recover from COVID-19, rebuild sustainably, respond to the needs of the planet, respect the rights of people, and revitalize the United Nations. The theme is consistent with the actions we need to take collectively to fulfill the legitimate expectations and aspirations of the people we serve at this difficult time in our history. Mr. President, we welcome your clarion call for hope because it sets a much-needed optimistic tone for this session, given the extreme urgency with which we must act under the challenging circumstances we find ourselves. Hope is a virtue that is at the very core of human progress. History is replete with examples of great things that can be achieved when hope is chosen over fear and despair. Our great organization that was founded after the devastating Second World War is itself a product and manifestation of hope. Even in the midst of the worst pandemic in a century, our actions should be driven by the belief that things can and will be better. A year ago, when I had the honor of addressing this noble assembly, we were all in shock as the pandemic wrecked through our national health systems, taking many lives, destroying livelihoods, overturning life as we know it, and ushering in a new normal of lockdowns and social distancing. A year later, we are still in the throes of the pandemic. However, advances in science has enabled the rapid development of vaccines. Given that science has delivered the vaccines, now it is time for world leaders, guided by the ideals of the United Nations Charter, to ensure that this life-saving resource is distributed equitably. Without a doubt, a worldwide vaccination campaign that ensures that all countries, especially the developing countries, have urgent access if we are to contain the continuing spread of this deadly virus and its more transmissible variants. Mr. President, it is for this reason that Botswana shares the frustration by many and strongly supports a call for the vaccines to be treated as a global public good, as this is key to recovery and rebuilding better from the COVID-19 pandemic. I take this opportunity to commend the efforts made by some of the developed countries to support developing countries, especially those in Africa, which have very low vaccination rates. I wish to thank sincerely our development partners who have donated vaccines and other forms of assistance to Botswana, in particular to help to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, which is spreading exponentially now in my country and claiming many lives. The donation is an indication that the global community is slowly heeding the call by the Secretary General that no one is safe until everyone is safe. But we have also seen how the uncontrolled spread of the virus triggers the emergence of new variants. A more equitable global vaccination rollout program is urgently needed if we are to win the race against the new variants. Let us be mindful of the fact that a variant somewhere is a variant everywhere. Mr. President, I'm happy to inform that my government has prioritized saving our people from this pandemic. In addition to encouraging our people to practice the necessary COVID-19 preventive measures, we have also channeled extra resources to the health sector. This includes purchasing of vaccines through the COVAX facility, the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team, AVAT, and through bilateral arrangements. While we have purchased enough vaccines to reach herd immunity, the current logistical supply challenges continue to hamper our vaccination plans. However, the slow rollout of vaccination programs in the global south, including my own country, cannot be solely viewed in terms of economic laws of demand and supply. Let us accept that the prevailing vaccine inequity is a real problem and a reflection of the inherent weaknesses of our multilateral system. We must therefore recommit both in deeds and words to the pledge we made at the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of this organization to strengthen international cooperation, coordination, and solidarity. One way of doing so is through the sharing and transfer of knowledge and waiver of intellectual property rights on vaccine production. We are ready to work with all stakeholders to make this a reality. We in Botswana are open to capacity strengthening for the production of COVID-19 vaccines. In order to make the desired impact under your able leadership, the United Nations system, and especially the principal organs, must work closely together and act jointly in a coordinated way. While my country holds the presidency of the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, we will strive together with you, Mr. President, to strengthen coordination and collaboration between the two principal organs of the United Nations that we lead. As you indicated in your vision statement, this will assist to make the United Nations stronger and more effective in discharging its mandate. Mr. President, our economies are still reeling from the impact of the heavy blow inflicted by the unparalleled scale of the pandemic. For small economies in particular, pre-existing challenges have been worsened on the economic mainstays such as trade, tourism, and the extractive industry. This undermines our ability to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its SDGs. Unfortunately, it is the most vulnerable and neediest in our societies who run the risk of being left furthest behind. However, all is not lost. I am hopeful that if we press the reset button, reaffirm our commitment to multilateral ideals, and we accelerate the implementation of SDGs in this decade of action, as you rightly point out also in your vision statement, Mr. President, financing trade, technology, and debt sustainability are some of the prerequisites for attaining the goals. My delegation has also taken note of your call for rebuilding back better, stronger, greener, and bluer. We could not agree more. The idea of doing different things differently is in line with our current approach at home. Upon realizing the scale of disruption occasioned by the pandemic, my government has instituted a reset agenda which comprises 5 priorities that are also aligned to the priority themes of your presidency. Firstly, the government is fully committed to save Botswana's population from COVID-19 through health programs that include vaccination. Secondly, we are reforming the public service to ensure effective implementation of government policies. Thirdly, we are accelerating digitalization in the delivery of services by government and creating enabling conditions for the active involvement of the private sector and society in the uptake and utilization of digital technologies. Our 4th priority is value chain development. This entails unlocking more value in key sectors such as mining, tourism, agriculture, and education by way of innovation and creativity of our people, especially the youth. This priority is aimed at accelerating economic diversification and youth empowerment and their employment. The 5th priority relates to mindset change. Here, the aim is to inspire people to own the national development goals, as well as to embrace the goals of both disposition and action. My government believes that the reset agenda and its priorities, which are in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, will enable us to recover from it stronger and to realize our development aspirations as enshrined in our National Vision 2036 and the 11th National Development Plan. These national frameworks are aligned to the global blueprint or in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the African Union's Continental Agenda 2063. We are, however, mindful of the fact that in an increasingly interdependent setting, Botswana's development trajectory is inextricably linked with that of the rest of the world. Now more than ever, multilateralism, international cooperation, and global solidarity is imperative. The onus is therefore on this Assembly as the main deliberative, policy-making, and representative organ of the UN to strive for a better world, a world where no country is left behind in attaining the 17 SDG goals. Beyond what we can do as individual countries, it is also our hope that the lessons being learned from this pandemic will enable the United Nations to find innovative ways for enhanced collaboration with regional and sub-regional organizations to ensure preparedness for future pandemics and epidemics. Mr. President, you assume your global leadership role at a time when the world is grappling with a myriad of other pressing global challenges, including devastating natural disasters associated with climate change, with small island countries among the most vulnerable. In the recent months, massive and uncontrolled floods swept across Western Europe, Asia, and other places, destroying riverbanks, homes, and killing hundreds in their wake. Hurricanes, typhoons, and storms, as we just again witnessed in countries like Haiti, the United States, and other places, are a major cause of devastation to critical infrastructure worth billions and contributory to humanitarian crisis. In the same wavelength, my own region, Southern Africa, has not been spared from the atrocious path of climate change, included disasters as evidenced by the rainy seasons, triggering floods, and combined with the devastating cyclones Kenneth and Idaya and Cyclone Eloise. This recurrent situation also calls for our region to strengthen its early warning and disaster preparedness mechanisms through regional collaboration with all stakeholders with the support of the United Nations. Whereas the past decade has already been the hottest in our planet, in recent months, more record-breaking temperatures and other climate change-induced incidents signal the real danger of increased global warming. The International Panel on Climate Change has again recently warned of a code red for humanity. Today, more than ever before, our planet has evidently become dangerously warmer, triggering melting ice, rising seas, floods, cyclones, hurricanes, droughts, and other extreme weather events. Combined with air pollution, these events destroy impeccable ecosystems, leading to negative repercussions for sustainable development, health, and food production systems, as well as food security. Mr. President, We have all along recognized that climate change is the greatest challenge we face, and indeed a real existential threat, demanding the urgent need to take bold measures to regulate the manner in which we interact with our environment by, among others, adopting technologies that reduce carbon emissions. I'd like to still believe that we can prevent the situation from getting much worse and provide innovative solutions. As former Secretary General Kofi Annan once reminded us, the world is not ours to keep. We hold it in trust for future generations. In September 2015, we committed ourselves to working tirelessly for the full implementation of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in all its three dimensions, being economic, social, environmental, in a balanced and integrated manner that also embraced the full respect for the enjoyment of all fundamental human rights. In the interest of time, Mr. President, I will skip and deposit the rest for the record, only to finish by saying it is regrettable that at a time when the main battle should be won against an invisible enemy, COVID-19, we continue to witness acts of violence which seek to take advantage and further threaten international peace and security. In our sub-region, where I had the privilege to serve as chair of the Southern Africa Development Community, SADC, organ on politics, defense, and security until recently in August 2021, we have committed to countering and eliminating the threat of terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. In addition to the threat to peace and stability brought about by terrorist insurgents in Mozambique, which we condemn, sanctions against Zimbabwe are a setback to our stability in the region. Botswana therefore calls on the international community to end sanctions against Zimbabwe. At the national level, my government continues to take steps towards keeping our people safe and thus contributing to the larger ideal of the maintenance of international peace and security. In this connection, my government has signed a memorandum of understanding with the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism in June 2021 with a view to enhance Botswana's capabilities and ability to better detect and deter terrorism. Mr. President, in concluding my remarks, let me reaffirm Botswana's abiding faith in the principles and purposes of the Charter of the United Nations, as well as the various multilateral instruments, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other protocols calling for universal access to education, good quality health care, food, rights of people with disabilities, women and children, as well as creating adequate opportunities for our youth population. Let me reassure you, Mr. President, of my country's full support, commitment, and cooperation in enabling you to fulfill your mandate during this 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. I thank you for your attention.